heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond. This is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
I'm Caroline Hyde at Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Coming up, the FTC, it gears up to sue Amazon this month after a 4-year antitrust investigation into the company. We'll bring you all the details.
Plus, after years in development, Microsoft's highly anticipated Starfield hits the marketplace to some rave reviews. We discuss with the heads of Bethesda Game Studios and Microsoft Gaming.
And the US is seeking more details into Huawei's made-in-China chip as they start to wonder about the effectiveness of US curbs on the country's vast technology sector. But let's dig into these markets first and foremost as we look at what is, again, a macro picture, Ed. Overall, we are seeing ISM services, the data, the macro picture of health here in the United States, whereas it is lackluster over in Europe and over in China. And what does that mean? Well, we actually see rates rise here in the US. We see the dollar rise in particular up 0.2%. And as we start to see a question of whether the Fed has to go further in terms of interest rate hikes to cool down the inflationary pressure here in the US, that, of course, means further sell-off in the Nasdaq. We're off by more than 1.1%. The two-year yield, as we see, crescendoing up some 6 basis points. We're above that 5% level, so notable in the minds of many at this moment. And we're also looking at what's happening in the Bloomberg Dollar Index, as I said, up 0.2%. What does that mean for the rest of the risk assets out there? Well, we know that Japan, China, they start to talk up, really trying to fight back on preserving their own currencies. What does it mean for crypto? Well, we're seeing actually, of course, continued pressure from the US dollar vis-a-vis Bitcoin. We're now at 25,578. Is there more risk aversion that's playing in? Is it a strong dollar? But we're off by 0.5%. But dig into some of the micro that's dragging down the Nasdaq.
Yeah, Carrie, these are the biggest points movers to the downside on the Nasdaq 100. Clearly, that hot ISM print is impacting equities at the single name level, but there's news flow as well. Overnight, the Wall Street Journal reporting that China's central government is telling specific agencies, some agencies is the language they use, to get their people to move away from using foreign handsets to domestic handsets with particular focus on Apple's iPhone. We will discuss that later in the show, along with what's happening with Huawei, Tesla and Nvidia, also big drags on the index at the index level on the Nasdaq 100. Two other big names that we're watching at the mega cap level. Well, the first is Microsoft. As you heard later in the show, we will speak to Microsoft's gaming chief and the head of Bethesda Studios. Starfield available today. So many of you have reached out to Cara and I with your thoughts on the title. We'll dig into that, but we also had the gatekeepers list out of the EU, which has some relevance to all of these mega cap names. Then Amazon, down 1%. As you know, Caroline, according to our sources, the FTC will finally act later this month with that suit.
Yeah, as soon as September. That's, of course, what's currently being reported by our own people on the ground. And we know that the company has been trying to, well, win the ear of regulators, but it's failed thus far to really offer what has been a substantive reason as to why its marketplace in particular hasn't been deemed, well, overall, some sort of competitive threat at the moment. So we're going to be digging into all of these lack of concessions thus far, it seems, with Bloomberg's Leah Nyland. Leah, what is it that Amazon really has failed to show to the FTC?
Yeah, the FTC has been looking at Amazon now for 4 years, and it has a lot of concerns about the way that it has organized its marketplace. In order to get the Prime badge, which you know is the one that most people buy, it's the one that when you go into the website and click on the buy box, that's the one right there. In order to get that, you have to use Amazon's logistics service, and the FTC is concerned that that unfairly ties access to the marketplace to using these other services that Amazon buys. Now, Amazon has tried to assuage some of the concerns about that, such as by opening up this new program called Prime Sellers, so that you could do your own logistics by using like UPS or FedEx, but that doesn't seem to have resolved any concerns by the FTC.
Leah, we know that in mid-August, representatives from Amazon met with the 3 commissioners of the FTC. We talked so much about it with you on this program. But what we didn't really learn was, are there any concessions or anything, Caro talked about that Amazon tried to do to avert this from happening, or was it always just going to happen?
Yeah, what we've heard about that meeting, it took place in mid-August. They had a video chat with all of the commissioners and sort of laid out what they think are their defenses to these things. There were no settlement talks at that meeting. So the FTC wasn't particularly interested in hearing about a settlement, which Amazon had offered a settlement to resolve these sort of concerns in both Europe and the UK. But here in the US, the FTC was not particularly interested. So that was sort of the last step before a suit is filed, and we're hearing that it will probably come sometime later this month.
And just give us the context, remind us, and if you've forgotten, of course, Lina Khan, many expected this was likely to come. It's the big beefy one vis-a-vis Amazon. And actually, they've taken steps to sue already in May and then in June.
Yeah, so this will actually be the fourth lawsuit that the FTC has filed against Amazon this year. They filed two earlier over the privacy related to Amazon's devices. Those were the Ring doorbell and the Echo speaker. Amazon agreed to pay $30 million in fines related to that. They filed a second suit that remains pending. Amazon contests that one over consumer protection allegations related to Prime. The FTC says that Amazon has deliberately made it too difficult for consumers to cancel their Prime subscriptions. Amazon, as I said, is contesting that, and that lawsuit is ongoing. But this will be sort of like the big one. You know, Lina Khan was well known before she became FTC chair for this paper she wrote about Amazon. Someone was joking to me the other day that, like, this lawsuit is going to be, like, inscribed on her tombstone when she dies. So, you know, the FTC has been, like, looking forward to this for at least the past 2 years, and it's going to be one of the biggest moves that they make during the administration.
All right, Bloomberg's Leah Nyland on the antitrust beat out of D.C. Thank you. Sticking with these kind of geopolitical tensions, the U.S. is working to establish a full detail of Huawei's advances in chip technology, news of which has stoked Chinese nationalism and ignited speculation about the effectiveness of Washington's curbs on the country's vast technology sector. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Auden. AMH, D.C. are calling for what they see as a warranted investigation into Huawei and the 7-nanometer processor. Will we get one?
Well, we heard from Jake Sullivan yesterday, and he really didn't want to make a prediction on what we saw out of Huawei. Interesting, and a coincidence, if you will, or potentially on purpose, when Gina Raimondo, the individual in charge of the Commerce Department, which is enacting those export controls and would likely be the ones to be leading that investigation, when she was leaving China. But what we heard from Jake Sullivan, the president's national security advisor, is that they need more information. They certainly want to look into this. But today, and they might get some political pressure, because today we heard from Representative Michael McCaul. He's the Republican chairman of the House Foreign Relations Committee, and he was asked about this. He was asked if China's top chip maker, SMIC, warranted an investigation. He said he certainly thinks it does, and he says it sure looks like they did in terms of violating sanctions. So this is not just going to be political pressure on the White House from Congress, on the Republican side or Democratic side. It does look like they want to see how Huawei was able to come up with this phone, given the fact that SMIC is on the entities list, Huawei itself is on the entities list, and given the fact that you have U.S. technology present within SMIC components. If they were to want to give it to Huawei, they would need to get release and call Washington and get that review before they should be allowed to do so, according to the current rule and law.
Small yard, high fence. That's basically what the tactics have been thus far. Do you think that ultimately gets called into question? Because Jake Sullivan seems to be sticking to that particular course.
Yeah, it was interesting. What Jake Sullivan wanted to say yesterday is that they still maintain that there is a lot of business between, or it seemed like he was trying to say business between Washington and Beijing on the commercial side. But these export controls, these sanctions, these investigations, if they have one, really has to do with national security concerns. That was the message from Gina Raimondo when she was in China, and that seemed to be the message yesterday from the podium in the West Wing.
Anne-Marie Auden. Brilliant. Thank you very much for bringing us the inside track from Washington. Meanwhile, look, let's just talk a little bit more about what's happening in China, because the government agencies have, in fact, banned staff from using iPhones, Apple iPhones, and other foreign-branded devices at work. That's all, as we understand, to the Wall Street Journal. China is Apple's largest international market, remember, and iPhones are common in both government and, indeed, private sector. So we'll see how that continues to unfold. Meanwhile, coming up, we've got a big one for you. Microsoft gaming CEO Bethesda Game Studios executive director, both joining us on the launch of Starfield. Have you been playing it? You watched the trailer? This is Bloomberg Technology.
Time for some talking tech. First up, right to repair supporters are increasingly bullish about their chances of advancing legislation in states nationwide after Apple unexpectedly got behind a California bill that cleared a key hurdle last week. Final approval of the proposal will make the Golden State the latest to pass a law requiring that electronics companies loosen control over the parts and technical know-how necessary to fix their products. And Microsoft and Apple face fresh investigations from EU regulators as part of the bloc's landmark digital markets clampdown. Those companies are among a list of 22 services that fall under the EU's Digital Markets Act, which gives them 6 months to fall in line with the new rules or challenge them in an EU court. Plus, Saudi Telecom is taking a nearly 10% stake in Spain's Telefonica for roughly $2.25 billion as the struggling Madrid-based carrier prepares to lay out a new strategy for future growth. The acquisition is bound to draw scrutiny from the Spanish government, which views Telefonica as a company of strategic importance, operating infrastructure that is critical to the nation's defence and security. Caroline.
Meanwhile, Ed, so many other stories to be digging into today. One of them is, of course, after their reverse stock split, 1 to 40, we were back at $3.43, but under pressure once again. We're down by 3%. And this, as we understand, the CEO is putting out really a letter talking about how they're looking to renegotiate nearly all of their leases with landlords, and they plan to exit what they call unfit and underperforming locations. Really, David Tolley here, Ed, is sort of at a race against time, really, isn't it? Ultimately, a lot of businesses haven't been returning to the office. We now get the feel that it's back to school, September's upon us, but ultimately they are running low on the money and they need to be renegotiating now. Of course, they've already warned that whether or not this business can be a going concern.
Yeah, so that happened last month, but the reality is there are people in the tech industry that still use WeWork. You know, small startup shared spaces. And a part of what Tolley said is that if we're going to close locations down, just like they've done in the past, as part of this process, they're going to have to go and tell everyone that's currently working in them. Yeah,
offer alternative arrangements, additional support to minimize any disruption or indeed inconvenience. But inconvenient it is, if you are indeed someone who enjoys going into the office in some of these key locations. But we keep a close eye on what is now at $3.43 stock. And this continued to be under pressure. From New York and San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology.
Let's go global and take a look at India's economic transformation, with multinational giants like Apple and Samsung looking to diversify their manufacturing away from China. Here's the question. Is India prepared to take China's path and emerge as the next global factory to become the next economic powerhouse? Here's Bloomberg's Minaka Doshi.
India is the world's second largest phone market. Over 200 million sold last year. A decade ago, most of them were imported. Now the country is a net exporter, with Samsung and Apple leading the charge. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wants to repeat this phone success across electronic goods, electric vehicles, green energy, chemicals, textiles. The near-term goal is to reverse the declining share of manufacturing in GDP, targeting $1 trillion in goods exports, and most importantly, creating jobs for the largest working-age population in the world. But standing in the way of this manufacturing ambition are some old challenges: land acquisition problems, high logistics costs, and some new ones as well: automation, lack of skilled labor. Take phones, for instance. The government has implemented a mix of high import tariffs on finished phones and production incentives to boost local manufacture. But supply chain indigenization is a long way off. According to one report, Indian factories add 18% in value to the electronic devices they assemble for export, compared with 38% in China and 24% in Vietnam. Manufacturing in Vietnam is also cheaper by at least a tenth. The Make in India campaign will benefit from record investments in infrastructure and logistics. There's also the lure of a potentially large domestic market. And now there's the China Plus One wave, as large global corporations seek to mitigate geopolitical risks and a slowing China economy by diversifying their supply chains. Since the liberalization of its economy in the 90s, India has come to be known as the back office to the world. But to become a developed economy, the government also needs it to become the factory to the world.
That was Bloomberg's Manaka Doshi. Right, top story. Microsoft shot for the sky with Starfield, its ambitious new space role-playing video game, and so far, looks like a pretty decent bet. The highly anticipated title arrives after 7 years in development. It's the first time Bethesda has entered a new universe in 25 years. Starfield available today to everyone through Xbox Game Pass. Delighted to bring in some of the giants behind the game. Phil Spencer, CEO of Microsoft Gaming, and Todd Howard, Executive Director of Bethesda Game Studios and the executive producer on the title. Todd, I'm going to start with you. I asked our audience, what would you ask Todd? Big question from many. Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game. We really do push the technology, so you may need to upgrade your PC for this game, but it's got a lot of great stuff going on in it, and the fans are responding awesome.
Cara and I have been reviewing the gameplay. We've also been reviewing some of the discussion online. Phil, good to see you. Xbox Game Pass, okay, it's available to anyone that subscribes. So how can you guarantee from a sort of sales perspective that you kind of hit the heights that Skyrim has? If it's available to anyone through Game Pass, how do you ensure people actually play it?
Well, we can see people playing, which is great, on the platform. You might know the game has been in preview for the last week, and it's already our most played next-gen exclusive game on Xbox. So we're seeing huge success. It's our biggest wish-listed game on Steam across Xbox and Bethesda Game Studios history. And now, as you said, tens of millions of Game Pass subscribers and the standard edition retail customers all get to play today. So incredible day, new franchise launching, and it's a lot of fun.
And I'm sure you want to dwell on the here, the now, Phil, but you've been asked, and I'm going to ask it again, you mentioned exclusive. So does that mean The Elder Scrolls 6 will be? How do you mark as to whether this is the right track? Phil.
Yeah, we look at it on a case-by-case basis with the games that we build. We want to make sure our games are available in so many different places, on our Xbox consoles, on PC, also via cloud. These games can come to almost any web-enabled device. We're looking at, millions and millions of players who will have access to Starfield and other Xbox Game Studios games. It's really about giving players choice around how they want to play, and they build their library of games.
What then, Todd, about timing? What then about other names, other games, Baldur, for example, Baldur's Gate, that have done significantly well? How do you think about ultimately making sure everyone's addicted to your current offering right here, right now?
I think if you look at video games now, it is so competitive. I think this year, 2023, could be the greatest year ever in video games. I don't know, but to have Starfield be out there and the response that we've gotten has just been incredible for everybody here at the studio. And the other thing is, yes, it's about launch, it's about today, but our games, they are played for years. We're 12 years after Skyrim, still one of our most played games. So we like to build these worlds that people can really, really get lost in. The fan feedback and what it means to everybody, it really is incredible for all of us here.
Todd, I want to go to another one of the audience questions, and it's very specific, but so many people asked it. Why are there no vehicles on planets? Space is one thing, but what about terra firma?
It's a great question, actually. It's something we consider. We're going to do outer space, we're going to do planets. Once you do vehicles, it does change the gameplay. So by focusing, once you land in your ship, that you're on foot, it lets us really, for the players, make it an experience where we know how fast they're seeing things. In one sense, you do have a vehicle, which is obviously you have your spaceship, you can go around in space, but then on the surface, you do have a jetpack, which you can upgrade, which is super fun, new experience for us, and obviously planets have different levels of gravity, which make that unique for many planets.
Phil, this is so closely tied to Xbox, and I find it interesting. I have to ask you about the latest offer from Microsoft and Activision to the UK CMA. Do you think that that structure will be accepted with the UK CMA?
We're working cooperatively with the regulators as we've had through this whole process. As you're well aware, it's been a long process. We remain confident in the work that we're doing with the CMA and the European Commission and here with the FTC in the US that we will close this acquisition.
Another rather specific question for you, Todd. What's been your favorite means and operation, like your build out there? What's been your favorite build or indeed favorite means of traveling through space?
Favorite means of traveling through space? Well, when I'm doing my ship, I like to focus on shields and defense because you never know what's going to happen when you jump into a new system in the game. As far as character builds, one of the things we love to do, which is there's so much you can do in the game. It's almost like 5 or 6 games at once. And we usually tell people, just get comfortable, do what you want to do. If you want to zen out and scan planets and explore them, great. If you want to join the pirates, great. If you want to do this epic main quest, it's really whatever you want to do, whatever you're comfortable with. And really, for us, it is, we do these worlds, but it's about the players making it, their own.
Todd, this game took 7 years to make. Does generative AI now allow studios like you to expedite the creation process quickly?
Well, it seems we want to do that every time. We want to do it faster, and there are areas where we can go faster, but these are complex projects. They're big technological innovation going on. There's so much design. This game has over 3 million words in it. So we do like to make really big games. Those will take some time, and as you mentioned before, the competition in our industry is quite high, the bar is high, and we want to get there for all of our fans every time.
It's great having some time with you, Todd, Howard, and indeed Phil Spencer. We thank you both. Phil Spencer, of course, CEO of Microsoft Game, and Todd Howard, Executive Director of Bethesda Game Studios, and of course the Executive Producer of Starfield. From New York and San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco. A quick check-in on the markets, looking at the NASDAQ 100 at the index level, Caro. And, we've really started to kind of accelerate our declines, down 1.2%. You talked at the top of the show about the hot print for ISM data. That seems to have weighed on sentiment. But some mega cap names also under pressure, a lot in the news flow that we've covered off. There's one specific name that I wanted to bring you, which is Baidu. China's search giant, the Google of China. There's a really interesting TechWatch column. This is Baidu over the last 7 days, but we're down in the last 2 sessions. The theory is that there could be some room to run on this stock because not only did it sort of get the regulatory approvals from China to deploy its generative AI tool to the public, but ErnieBot has hit 1 million downloads. And what our colleagues in Bloomberg News have done is look at all the technical indicators, look at the options market and say, there's a lot of hype around AI, but this is one name that we might want to watch for. So I wanted to squeeze that in while we had a minute.
It's good because we're going to be digging into the world of AI a little bit more with a VC, Air Street Capital. Of course, Nathan Benesh is going to be joining us, and he's been all focused on Baidu. But let's go from Baidu to Binance right now, the world of crypto. 2 Binance executives, Ed, overseeing regions including Eastern Europe and Russia. Well, they've left, and actually it's just adding the drip, drip, drip of continued revolving doors at the moment, with senior managers just departing. This comes, as we know, that regulators in the US and elsewhere are cracking down on the company. Bloomberg's Sonali Basak joins us more. So is this in any way idiosyncratic to Eastern Europe and Russia, or is this a broader theme here?
There's definitely a broader theme here. We know that there are a number of very senior executives here. Remember, the Wall Street Journal had also reported that Caroline Hyde, who ran the global fiat business, is among those who have departed. Then we also have the person who is the global head of product who had left very recently as well. We also have the person who ran the Binance business in the Asia Pacific region. So certainly across regions, you are seeing different members of the Binance senior leadership teams start to exit. Now, remember, crypto tends to be a business where people come and go a lot. However, you're only as good as your business here. I know that this is a technology business, but it is the people who are expanding in those areas. And Binance has always been kind of the central, pivotal, international player when it comes to the crypto community, as well as being such a large exchange across the world. So to your point on, is it just Eastern Europe, the fact that we've seen such senior executives tied to global product, Asia, as well as Eastern Europe, definitely indicates that you are seeing issues in different areas.
Yeah, CZ though,
yes,
putting a bit of a kind of, silver lining to it all, saying, look, they're going on to new ventures. Some people, great talent, are coming from outside of Binance.
And for what it's worth, having this conversation with you now is making me giggle a little, hear that, because you are seeing this at other companies. You are seeing places like Goldman say the same exact thing. And so as far as talent leaving, going other places, and having a relationship, to the extent you can prove that that relationship is playing out, that's the benefit of having your first job or such a high-level position at such a key exchange as you build new crypto products. But again, the only benefit from the company comes if that relationship were to continue.
Sonali, we're going to go pretty deep on another name in just a minute, but Binance, like many others, is just as embattled, particularly with the SEC scrutiny, and this is a thing that CZ has to still deal with.
Of course, yeah. Remember, that is, of course, a very big problem here when it comes to the lawsuits that they're facing, as well as the regulatory scrutiny, particularly here in the United States. I would also say it's not just the SEC that it's facing. Remember, we're not too many months away from when their own stablecoin product had faced scrutiny here via the issuer that it worked with through the New York Department of Financial Services. And these are all pretty critical pieces of the puzzle when you think about what the crypto industry relies on and what they trade at the end of the day. So it is kind of coming from all sides, isn't it? But again, these are now years-long issues that Binance has been facing. And so these executives leaving is not just about regulation anymore, it's about business.
Away from Binance, Sonali, it's that time of the week where I ask you, what is the latest on the Bitcoin spot ETF saga?
Ed, we are weeks away from the next set of answers from the SEC on whether they're going to approve or punt or deny more ETFs. And given that we are just days away from when they've punted yet again on a host of ETFs tied to major providers, just a day ago we were speaking to an executive at Valkyrie, which has a pending application, who said that he believes that there's a 50% chance that after October they finally get an answer either way. And there is a grand hope that there will be an approval, but it is pretty fascinating to see the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, for example, how it's trading. It's still at a 20% discount to its net asset value. Remember, that gap had closed after the initial decision last week from the district judge regarding their lawsuit against the SEC. As far as Grayscale goes, they're asking the SEC for answers as well. They're only a couple days into that 45-day waiting period. But that 45-day waiting period, the longer it goes on, the more frustrating it is for everybody who has an application that is sitting on the sidelines, that is waiting for an answer in October.
Yeah, and it is an important question because the market is trying to play it. And if there's anyone that understands the moving timeline, it's Bloomberg's Sonali Basak. Thank you very much. OK. As the AI hype brings founders and a fresh influx of VC dollars to San Francisco, one industry has been left ruining what might have been crypto. That's the view of Ripple Labs co-founder Chris Larsen. I sat down with him yesterday here in San Francisco, a city that Larsen's now trying to help fix. He outlines how he feels the federal government and US regulators have cost San Francisco the title as the blockchain capital of the world. Have a listen.
That's really unfortunate because I think, unfortunately, this administration made a really bad call.
At the city level or at the federal level?
At the federal level. They pretty much killed San Francisco from being what it was, the blockchain capital of the world. We owned it, and we don't anymore because the Biden administration, for whatever reason, decided they want to push this industry offshore. And so it's London, Singapore, Dubai that really are the global capitals of blockchain. That's unfortunate. Maybe our vacancy rate would be half of what it is here in San Francisco. It's 30%. It might have been 15% if we still were the global blockchain capital of the world. So that was a missed opportunity. It's really unfortunate. It hurt the city.
The latest with Ripple Labs action at the federal level is that you have objected to the SEC's request to appeal the original court ruling, which was a positive for Ripple in the sense that it found the cryptocurrency XRP was not a security when it was sold to the public. Could you just explain what the latest is with that legal dispute?
Well, I think the bottom line is the SEC lost on everything that was important to them and important in regulation of the industry. The case still continues. There's appeal processes that everybody has the right to do. But we think that this is really groundbreaking. This is the law of the land. And it's actually quite good news, I think, I think the U.S. screwed up here on crypto and blockchain policy. This is the beginning now, through the courts, unfortunately, instead of through regulators, to get that clarity and get us back in the game.
Well, there's kind of both happening in parallel. There's your situation with the SEC. Think about the applications pending for Bitcoin spot ETF. Gary Gensler and the SEC have both decisions to make on applications and fights that they are not willing to pick. How has that reflected on Gary Gensler, to your mind, as lead of that
you bring up a great point. You saw in the latest challenge on the ETF, the Bitcoin ETF. Again, SEC lost, but not only that, the judge really admonished the SEC, really called them out in a way that you don't really see very often. I think it's just more proof that Gary Gensler's decision of sort of engaging this regulation by enforcement, rather than getting clear laws, he knows they're not clear. He just likes that lack of clarity so that he can go after anybody and make up the rules as he goes along through bullying. And that's not the American way. This should be at Congress. We should have clear rules from the legislatures, not through these sort of unelected, power-hungry, and really misplaced decision makers that you see in Gary Gensler.
Well, Cara, I mean, you heard it. Strong words against the chair of the lead US regulator. But he's basically making an appeal, which is we want the federal government to write laws, not keep going to court over and over again with the same agency.
And yet they haven't. And it's interesting, we're getting more and more clamour that perhaps this isn't a partisan issue, perhaps this becomes bipartisan in some way. But Ed, what's interesting is just dwell on the San Francisco element here, because this is what really took my attention, how he feels that the sort of sucking sound of crypto and blockchain has hurt the city and indeed the district yet more.
Yeah, so the economic data point that he cited was commercial real estate or office vacancy, which last quarter was at 32%, CBRE data. And he said it would be 15% probably had this become such an unhappy place for blockchain companies in particular. And he's saying to new founders, don't come here. The city he's trying to fix, you have better luck going to Singapore or Dubai because they have proactive regulation that supports the founding and building of companies in that space.
But I feel that must be something that, well, reflects on the US more broadly. Is it just because it's an added wound into San Francisco at a time where they're still trying to bring workers back to the city, still trying to ensure that their real estate is full in some way, not just in crypto, but in software and anything but AI, basically?
His answer was very quick and simple. The federal government were the main sort of driver of people out, but there's no champion in San Francisco right now trying to bring them back in. And that's why we have a vacuum.
Really interesting take on particular niche on that, focus on that city. But look, coming up, let's go even more broad. And we're interested to talk about what's happening in Europe and cultivating the startup scene there as well. Big new raise coming from Air Street Capital. It's a venture firm backed by Spotify's CEO, Daniel Ek. We're going to be joined by Nathan Benesh. He's general partner at Air Street Capital. That's next. Meanwhile, look, before we go into private, let's go to the public markets. We just want to shine a light on the fact that we are at basically session lows. The S&P off by more than a percentage point. I'm looking at the Nasdaq off by 1.4%. This is a question of macro data. Is the US economy too strong? Does the Fed still have to hike? Do rates go and stay above that 5% level on the 2-year? From New York and San Francisco, this is Bloomberg Technology. It is that time, our VC roundup, starting with 500 Global. Look, it's one of the most active early-stage venture investors over in Southeast Asia. It's an early backer of Grab, and they just raised $143 million to ramp up investments in the region. Firm now has more than $2.4 billion in assets under management. Meanwhile, the blank check company, started by former IndyCar driver, that's Michael Andretti, he's merging with AI startup Zapata AI, according to sources. The merger values Zapata at about $200 million. Plus, Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners, it's acquiring a $150 million minority stake in an Israeli car company. This marks the first investment in Israel for the Miami-based private equity firm, which is backed by Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund. A really global one, Ed.
Yeah, those are the VC headlines. Let's stick with the world of venture capital. Air Street Capital, a venture firm focused on early-stage AI startups, has just raised a second fund worth $121 million with backing from Spotify's CEO, Daniel Ek. Let's bring in Nathan Benesh, general partner at Air Street Capital, for today's VC Spotlight. We ask this question, Nathan, every time. How quickly did you raise and close that fund?
Yeah, it's a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me. It's definitely a great time to be investing in this space. This is just a moment in time. I tend to think that raising funds is basically a job over your entire career, and this is just a little snapshot in the journey. But there was a lot of interest, and we're fortunate to end up where we did.
You are well known across Europe, clearly backing from, well, the pin-up in the public markets that is Spotify. But I'm interested in basically the areas of opportunity. Many would say, look, AI is kind of dominated by San Francisco right now. But I think a Mistral over in Europe, which had a phenomenal first raise. What opportunities in artificial intelligence are you seeing from the region?
Yeah, I think the opportunities for AI are genuinely global. What's fascinating about Europe is it has this very strong academic and research base. For many years, many of the major contributors to landmark AI research papers that kind of underpin the technology that works today, had their early careers in Europe. And I'm investing both in Europe and in North America. I've been particularly interested in pharmaceuticals and drug discovery, where I think AI is one of these amazing native languages to explain biology. I'm also interested in enterprise software and automation, and also emerging sectors like robotics and national security and defense.
Nathan, can the startups in Europe building large language models compete with those being built here by the likes of OpenAI, by Google?
Yeah, I think the foundation model space is particularly tricky. I mean, as we all know, it's very capital intensive, and there's probably going to be just a couple of winners here that'll form this kind of bedrock of web services. I'm particularly not extremely drawn to these companies because I'm not sure they make for great venture investments, particularly for early stage funds. But it's definitely an interesting domain to watch, and never say never, but it's not really the focus for me.
What's interesting is we came to you, Nathan, on a story, really global one, of sort of venture backed by Saudi Arabian money investing in Israeli startups. And I'm interested as to where the competition is for money, allocation of checks. Are you seeing Chinese money? Are you seeing Middle Eastern money coming into the startups across Europe? And are they taking it? And are you investing alongside them?
I actually don't see that much. For sure, in the news we've seen, AI generally become part of the geopolitical discourse, and it's one of the kind of vectors through which various companies are going to be competitive going forward, and so it makes sense the government should be involved. And I think the UK government's been making some interesting moves there as well. On the investing landscape, I don't really see them. We tend to work with European and North American partners pretty much exclusively. But hasn't really crossed my roadmap as much.
And Nathan, what is interesting is, of course, where you're coming to us from, and indeed, well, the ties you have with the UK sector in particular. And Ed, that is one that we talk about time and time again, really, London and its ability to continue to be a dominant force in AI or indeed tech.
I think back to IVP, and they talked about it, Nathan, being a London-based bridge to Europe. You're going to run your firm out of London. What's it like in this post-Brexit world? Is it a good place to be a VC?
Yeah, I think VC's definitely gone global, particularly in the last couple of years. I think firms that have been reticent to write checks over Zoom, are no longer like that. I mean, for me, actually, I've invested 2 checks over Zoom and sold the company before I actually met the founders in person. So this can happen. I'm completely happy with that. I tend to use London as the base, and then I'm very happy to travel wherever I need to in Europe and North America. But as you say, Europe is a hotbed for talent, and with DeepMind kind of winning the power balance with Google to be like the de facto AI lab for the company and being based in London, I think is a big win. And with OpenAI joining the fray and Anthropic as well, I think it's a great time to be in the space.
We've tracked all the data this year from PitchBook or CB Insights, wherever, about the flow of VC dollars to San Francisco in the context of AI and ML. I just wondered if you could explain any bright spots that you see, even if it's at a city level, where there is a lot of talent, there's a lot of dollars flowing to very specific areas in Europe.
Yeah, I think it's a very distributed kind of game. And as you know, like seed is very local in a way. So you do have to be present in different ecosystems, which is, why we try and make key contributions into the space through State of AI report, through running best practice meetups and kind of trying to lift sort of all boats basically by showing best practices. We invest in everything from, a spin out in Stuttgart to, companies in Zurich or Paris or Stockholm. And so I think if you kind of own the megaphone online, where basically the forum for machine learners to debate is basically Twitter or now X.com, then that's a great place to start to meet people. And so I think when I'm in New York, people think I live there. When I'm in London, people think I live there. It's, I just go wherever the opportunities are.
And Nathan, you, of course, have a PhD in cancer biology from the University of Cambridge. Where is the opportunity in the biotech meets AI space?
I think it's a radical transformation for how drugs are developed, designed, marketed, how patients are selected for trials, and how we monitor success of trials as patients are going through them. And I think every one of those steps in the process that I described can really be rethought using better data capture, better machine learning, trying to remove a lot of the biases and irreproducibility issues that you see, because a lot of this process has still been very artisanal. Many of the drug discovery companies that are publicly traded today and suffering are, based on science out of the lab that's sometimes not particularly reproducible because it's all done by, human people pipetting things in a lab. And so I think once you move to this industrialization of biology, where you use automation, you use machine learning, then you start to create companies that I think are far more resilient because they have many more shots on goal than a single drug. And so they look like multi-portfolio companies. And we see this with Exscientia and with Recursion, 2 companies that we're privileged to be a part of. And there's a really exciting generation of technology talent, machine learners that are coming into biology as the kind of new domain to build value. It's far more exciting than kind of optimizing clicks on the internet.
Here's to exciting and optimism to finish the conversation. Nathan Benesh, we thank you for your time, General Partner over at Air Street Capital on the Raise. Meanwhile, coming up, look, it was rain-soaked, it was muddy. We're going to talk to someone who was there. Burning Man made internet a coveted product in particular. We'll describe why. This is Bloomberg Technology.
Time for going viral, and Burning Man is still the talk of the internet after the annual Nevada festival turned into a multi-day mudfest. Bloomberg Technology's Ellen Hewitt has first-hand experience and writes about how Wi-Fi was a commodity in today's Tech Daily. Ellen, what was it like?
Well, it was funny as a reporter to be in the middle of what we later found out was a news event, but, It sounded dramatic if you were reading about it on the news, and certainly there were some people for whom this was very inconvenient and a little scary, but I think it really wasn't as bad as it sounds. And it kind of brought people together, talk about a reason for everyone to band together, share resources, try to find ways to have a laugh, even though we were all a little wet and cold and very muddy.
Wet and cold and muddy sounds like Glastonbury to me. We thank you, Ellen Hewitt, getting back safely. From New York, from San Francisco, that's it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Check out the podcast.